Hi, I'm Kian, and I'm back with another video. Physics, high school physics. So this question: the graph represents the motion of the car. We're given a velocity versus time. You have to find a distance. So in the velocity graph, the area under the graph is the distance displacement. So you have to find the area. So you have 4 units times 30, so it's 120. So our answer is B. Let's move on. Number 23. A box is rests on the floor. The student drags it. A force is shown. Based on Newton's second law, what is the velocity? So we want to find the final velocity. So we can say that the acceleration here is the net force, which is 8 newtons over 10, which is a mass, so 0.8. And then we can use the VF as VI plus AT and saying the VI is 0 to see that VF is just 0.8 times 1, which is just 0.8. So the answer is B. And we can move on. 24. 2 rubber balls rolled along a straight back track towards each other at the same speed. The balls are the same size but at different masses. The 2 balls collide. Which of the following best describe the have total momentum? So there's no outside force. It's in a closed system. Momentum is conserved, and so no question. Answer choice A. 25 part A. The graph shows the position of the hiker in different times. At which point was the hiker farthest from the standing position? So the greatest the position, kind of the furthest away from the initial positions S it is. So it should be I, which is answer choice B. And same graph, during what interval was the speed of the hiker the greatest? So speed is not a vector, so it's only magnitude. So it doesn't care if it's negative, positive. So you only have to find the steepest slope here, which is obviously segment Y, which is the steepest slope. So this answer shows C. 26. A wavelength at 10 meters per second with a wavelength of 2 meters. What is the frequency? So velocity of a wave is equal to the wavelength, which is 2 meters times the frequency. So 10 divided by 2 is 5 hertz. Answer choice C. 27. Instead of radioactive decay is represented by the diagram. Here's an alpha decay, original nucleus decay plus alpha. What is best what happened? So what you can see is that the original nucleus lost 2 protons, which means that the mass of the nucleus gets impacted. So there's energy released and the mass decreased. So the answer is D. Another question about waves. Diagram shows 2 waves that are kind of interfering with each other, and so there's kind of interference, and so when they interfere with each other, then the overlap should be something like kind of that kind of decreases the overall kind of amplitude. That then it's obvious that the answer that makes sense is choice B. 29. Table provides information about 4 pairs of objects. Distance is given, masses are given, and for each pair of objects has the greatest gravitational attraction. Gravity depends on 2 things. Depends on mass and depends on distance. The greater the mass, the greater attraction. The greater distance, the lower the attraction. So we want to find the 2 objects that have the least distance between them, but the greatest mass. And obviously S and T are the best option. So we go for answer choice A. 30. Graph shows the speed of sound at different temperature and 3 media. Graph 3 media are this and this and this. We have to kind of base them on the graph. So if you know that speed of sound increases as density increases. So by this assumption, medium X should be a more dense object, a silver. Medium Y should be a lesser dense, a water liquid, and medium Z should be the least dense between the 3, a gas. So silver, water, air. So answer choice B. Move on. 2 still spheres A and B have a mass of 0.54. Each sphere is moving to the right. They collide. Sphere A slows, but both spheres continue to move to the right. So since A is hit by this and A slows, obviously we can assume that a B technically has a greater speed. So we can automatically cross out answer choices C, answer choice C. But we know that the momentum is conserved. And so since the momentum is conserved, then the then the sum of the velocities should be the same. And so from this fact, only answer that makes sense is choice A. So yeah, we are finished with this question. Next one. So an airbag helps prevent injuries for drivers, which will follow best describe how airbag helps. So this question about impulse and changing momentum. And so what airbag does basically, if I want to explain it kind of without answer choices, is the fact that airbag reduces the force that is applied to us by the crash by kind of dividing the force into a longer period of time. So basically, it increases the time interval, but it decreases the force. So the impulse or changing momentum doesn't change; it stays constant. But the different variables, kind of, or the force and time, they just change in amounts. So our answer should be an airbag causes a driver to come to a stop over a larger time interval, reducing the force applied by the driver. So answer should be B. 30. So this investigation. Two insulated containers. Table 1, table 2. We can move on. Question. So we're given a graph. So container 1, container 2. At which point it first reached thermal equilibrium. Thermal equilibrium is when the temperature is first equal, and it's at point Y, obviously. So choice C. Before beginning the investigation, the student predicted the direction of thermal energy transfer would be from container 1 to container 2. So which observation? So basically, we have to think that thermal energy or heat travels from a higher temperature to a lower temperature. So basically, the assumption that probably that the student had is the container 1 had a higher temperature than container 2. So should be answer choice D. 35. In investigation 2, liquid Z had an initial temperature of 25 before this amount of heat was added. What was the final temperature? So this is a classical MCAT question, mass times specific heat times changing temperature. This is the amount of energy that's added. So you can divide that by the mass, which is given here is 200 grams, as given here, and the specific heat of Z is 3.67. And if we add that 25, which is the initial temperature, we just get 99 for our answer. So 35 should be C. 36. During the first 50 seconds of investigation, temperature, this, liquid W from this. So what is the energy? Again, MCAT, change temperature is 6 times the mass is 200, sorry. And the specific heat is given here 4.18, and our answer should be 5,016 joules, so A. Part B, student A reduced repeated investigation with a less mass, less amount of liquid W, but same heat source, and so we're going to analyze how the results change. And so we have to consider that this is a closed system, so nothing should change. The heat should stay the same. And the fact that we increase the mass should bring down, because the heat depends on three things: mass, the changing temperature, and the specific heat, which is constant. So since mass increase, to balance out everything, that's the changing temperature should decrease. And so obviously answer choice B is the correct answer. 37 is open response. I'm going to cover that later. 38. The diagram shows a simple circuit. A location near the circuit is labeled X, which of the following explains whether there is a magnetic field or not. So since there's a resistor's battery, there's a current going on, there is an electrical current going on. And by definition, we know that when there's electrical current, then if there's a magnet, there's also some kind of magnetic field created in the compass near the kind of the point X it is, or wherever it is. So there should be a magnetic field because the current flows through the wire. So answer choice C is the best answer. 39. Elephants use sound for communication. Table shows the average frequency. What additional information is needed to determine wavelength? So the kind of the variable that associated with frequency and wavelength is the speed. Speed is a product of wavelength and frequency. If we're given the speed of sound by these waves, we could just divide by frequency and get the wavelength. So the answer is A. For 40, circuit has a current of 0.6 amps. 50 is 50 ohms is the resistance. What is the voltage? V is equal to IR. I is 0.6 times the resistance of 50, and we get 30 volts. Answer choice B. And for the last question, as students listening to music use noise canceling headphone to reduce the outside noise. I will create an inverted sound wave, there's noise canceling. What type of behavior is used? So basically the noise is kind of resemblance of the amplitude. And we know that as the amplitude, kind of the two types of interference, the only interference that kind of decreases the amplitude, decreases outside noise, is the destructive interference. The constructive adds on to that amplitude. So obviously answer choice B. And lastly, the students then uses noise canceling headphone in location where the outside noise is louder and has a higher pitch. And how would the noise canceling headphones be equally effective when the outside noise is louder and has a higher pitch? Again, the keywords is louder goes for amplitude, has a higher pitch goes for frequency. So the wave's frequency and amplitude would need to technically increase to have a louder and have a higher pitch. So our answer should be choice C. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and goodbye.